Hey, it's Professor G. Welcome back to the Lead Out Loud podcast. This is episode 58. It is called Don't Be Shy, but Don't Be an Asshole either. This one is really central to a lot of things I talk about, which is balance. You know, you got to get stuff done, but you don't want to go over the top. So we're going to have that conversation here. This is a continuation of the conversation with my friend Drew Harnish. My buddy Kevin Meredith is guest hosting on this episode again. I hope you enjoy the conversation. We're going to pick up where we left off at the end of episode 57. And that's where I asked about, hey, these antibodies within these large organizations that tend to be resistant to change. How do you combat those? What's the advice to new professionals? Maybe somebody new to an organization, maybe somebody that just got out of college. You know, they don't teach you that. So how do you approach it? And that's where the quote will come in handy here. That is the title now of this episode. Please take a moment, if you're enjoying these conversations, to head over to lolworkshop.com. That's lolworkshop.com. I have a YouTube channel where I post some videos aimed at new college hires, young professionals, college students that provide resources to help them along their leadership journey. So I'd love it if you head over there and hit the subscribe button. Also, if you're enjoying these conversations on the podcast, make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. These are available on YouTube. You can go to lolpodcast.net and click on to whatever podcast platform you prefer. So without further ado, let's get into episode 58. Don't be shy, but don't be an asshole either.
I had a couple things that come to mind there. I'd say, you know, one of those in no particular order. One of those things is, you know, if you're the kind of person that likes to challenge the status quo, number one, don't be shy, but don't be an asshole. Right? Done that before. That doesn't work. If you're intentional about, you can use that to your advantage at certain points, but earlier in your career is not the time. Sometimes you fire for effect when you have the respect of the audience. You know, that play works well when there's already trust. But early on, so I say rather than assert things, ask more questions. You know, help me understand why this process is, you know, teach me this process. I'm not familiar. Hey, I've seen this. I understand how supply chain works and how you do, you know, part ordering, because I did it in my last company, but help me understand how you do it here so I understand the process, right? And you could have 6 ideas in your head of why this is stupid. But rather than come in and say, I see 6 things with this process that are stupid, the antibodies will immediately come out. Right. So instead, it's like, hey, help me understand. This is different from what I've seen in my last company. And, you know, so I want to understand why you do it that way here, because there's probably some reason. Right.
Even if it's stupid.
Even if it's stupid, there is probably a reason. Right. Okay. Because we accidentally over-ordered material 10 years ago, and the guy who doesn't work in this department anymore, you know, cost the company millions of dollars. And like, okay, like, and these stories perpetuate that thing. So there's probably a really good reason for why there's controls and why every purchase over a certain amount has to go and get vice president approval, or, you know, there's reasons.
There's
right?
reasons.
So help me understand the reasons so that I know, you know, and then later, not at the same time, come back and reflect. Like the gift of time is a great thing, because these companies have been around for 100 years. You don't need to change that immediately, right? What's another few weeks of that problem?
That's hard for me, Drew. That's hard for me.
Hey, I know. So choosing your moment, I'd say, you know, be more inquisitive than more assertive, and that's I'm also telling my past self that, because, you know, some of these are scars and learnings from having, you know, maybe tried to be more bullish and bumping up against that. But that's why. So. That'd be one thought. Ask more, and then time when you come back to that and say, hey, I was thinking about what we were talking about last week, and I had an idea. Right? Just the ego play is a little bit different there. Of course, I'm an industrial engineer. I already did my own math on the process, and I know this is a better way. But I'm not going to say I know this is better, and here's why. Until you get invited into that conversation, well, help me under. Okay, hey, why do you think that's a better idea? Well, because this is, twice as fast, and because the vice president costs this much per hour, and this is how much time we spend when we escalate this every time, and that's more than the value of the risk that it would be to accidentally order this extra, once every 5 years. I just did the math. Hey, that's so that's you got to get invited to that conversation to some respect. The other thing I'd suggest, that's more like the personal side of like controlling yourself, if you will, on how you navigate that. Another thought would be find the Sherpas in the organization that have already figured out some of the antibodies, or the antidote to the antibodies. There's people who are in the change game. You're not unique and special just because you're new. Although you do have, there's this honeymoon phase, right? You start a new role, new company. You see things with fresh eyes that people in the organization have now are immune to because it's just become habit. And so that there is an awesome window for new people to share your experience and feedback. So anytime I bring in new people, I want them to ask those questions. I'm like really overt with like, hey, you're going to see things that we're going to miss. So anyway, that's another one. Find the people who know how to navigate the process and link up with them, because they can help you navigate the process, but you're going to see fresh things that they have not noticed because they've blended in. So that's a really cool pairing.
To add a little nuance to a piece of your answer there, speaking for myself, one of my challenges that I can remember back when I was that new guy coming in, especially closer to when I was out of school, I was suffering. So I didn't know what it was called at the time, but it was the curse of knowledge. I went into the Fortune 50 company that had been around for 100 years, and I assumed that they knew all the things that I had just spent the last 6 years studying.
That's fair.
And so I was like, that was the perspective that I had, and that's so you combine that with some of perhaps the arrogance or ego of youthful indiscretion, and yeah, okay, I was the asshole. I've said that before. Sometimes, maybe a lot of the times, but
and then you join AA, and
you just keep drinking, and
well, assholes anonymous.
yeah, no, I know, I got it. No, I got it. I'm just saying. No, but I think that's another thing that maybe people don't realize in a lot of instances is that, look, we've talked about this before. That's why we're no good at marketing as engineers, because we're not in the habit of repeating ourselves. We assume that people, well, look, I already told you what the problem is one time, so clearly now everybody understands what the problem is, and that's obviously not true. And I know that was part of my challenge early on is, oh, I didn't know that these people didn't know that. I thought I was the guy who was trying to play catch up, and they were just being stupid about it. No, I need to help educate them.
Yeah, that is, yeah, I've seen that play out multiple times as well. Part of the kinds of problems that I have really enjoyed solving over the last few years have been very fundamental operations management kind of problems. How do you how do you come up with a production plan? How do you lay out your factory? How do you think through how you're going to scale and plan everything? And how do you manage the day's work and KPIs and all the basic stuff that you learn in industrial engineering school, right? And realizing that, like, I learned to do that. I assume everybody that runs a factory knows that stuff. And then you start encountering, particularly when brought in as a consultant, you start encountering these kinds of problems in pretty big organizations, and you start looking around and saying, okay, well, where are the metrics on the wall that should explain what we're supposed to be doing today and how that's performing or not, and and they say, well, we don't have there. It's in this thing, and we don't. Okay, well, why isn't it visible? And you go to that. Okay, well, and then when you do see that, you start asking the question of like, well, why is this red, and how long has this been? Oh, I don't know. We never looked at that before, and it's like, okay, fascinating.
We didn't know we were supposed to ask questions about the redness. We thought we were just supposed to have the metric.
So there was like this epiphany I had, in 2016 or so. I was on one of these projects for an internal customer, working on a program that had been around. It was probably designed in the 50s, maybe 60s, and they're still making them. And I just assumed this factory's been here forever. Everybody knows how to do it, and we're trying to pull cost out of the process. And the first couple weeks going out there, I was like, I don't know what we're going to do that they haven't already figured out. And I realized immediately, the first week, like, okay, there's no plan written down anywhere. Everybody's doing it with their heads up here because they haven't had to be this efficient before. And I start asking the really dumb, I put my ego down, which was relatively easy at the time because I was relatively new to the organization and I had never been to that part of the company. And so I legitimately didn't know a lot of things, but I knew how to diagnose a production factory set of problems. And then a few of us, had that same mindset. We were out there and he was like, let's just go back to the basics. So we pulled the team into the room and we asked a bunch of really basic questions. And it was like IE 101. And there were lots of things that were not answered. We went out to go with it. The original ask was, can you go optimize our resource allocation of all the people in all these positions? And we were like, absolutely. We were an analytics team going out to like, sure, absolutely, we'll do that. And then we say, okay, well, like, can you send us like the plan? Can you send us all the actuals? Can you send us the sequence and the precedence diagram for how these operations are supposed to go and what the crew loading looks like today? And they were like, what? And we said, oh, interesting.
So no would be the answer to that question.
So we said, yes, we can absolutely help you build this optimized model of how you're going to catch up your behind schedule and get the cost. But first, these building blocks need to be kind of reconstituted. So let's start there, and we'll help you do that. And they said, great. And we did. And now they won another multi-year contract and all this stuff. But I got down telling a war story. I forget what the original question was, but it was, how do you...
the question was, in the context, Drew, of a war story, can you provide an example of...
Yeah, that's how it goes. Criminal's work is the point. Ultimately, I think that I latched on to the point you made, Sean, about I know all this stuff, so I assume everyone else knows this stuff,
right.
And then realizing that there's a need in big companies and new startups to do these kinds of things that for some people have a background in this, or we could flip the tables to a whole different domain of expertise. I'm not a finance expert, so if there's a finance problem, like bring in somebody who knows that stuff, but that person also needs to recognize that they know things that the company doesn't and share that knowledge. And that doesn't mean you have a big ego and, you come at it a bad way, but knowing that I have something special to share that, to this organization is unique and maybe to a different organization isn't.
I think it works the other way too. Like with startups, I was really surprised after leaving Boeing and doing consulting work with startups, how there was a general lack of the things that I took for granted for years inside of Boeing. Six Sigma, Lean, like,
that's true.
What? You got, this is not new stuff. How, like, you're a new company. How do you not build that in from the ground up? And so it works the other way too.